This is The Future Of, where experts share their vision of the future and how their work is helping shape it for the better. I'm Jessica Morrison.
And I'm David Blaney.
Home sharing platforms like Airbnb have changed our holiday plans. Many of us are shunning tourism hotspots and instead preferring to undertake immersive experiences that make us feel like a local. To learn more about this phenomenon, with us today is Dr. Michael Volger, co-director of Curtin University's Tourism Research Cluster. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Firstly, why has Airbnb had such a profound impact on travel?
Yeah, that's very correct that it had a profound impact. We need to recall, I guess, that it has only been founded in 2008. And perhaps for Australia, we can say it has only arrived around 2014-15, really. But if we observe the figures and the growth since then, that's really impressive. So we had about 2% of international visitors in 2015 booking Airbnb when they came to Australia, and this went up to approximately 10% until the end of 2017, from an almost negligible figure to a significant share of it. So I think it's many reasons. Let me point out, I guess, at least 3 of them. The first and most well-known and most discussed one will be the experience. I call it the experience hypothesis. It's the opinion that Airbnb offers a more authentic, more unique holiday experience to visitors, and it's definitely an important aspect. Airbnb celebrates diversity. It does not apologize for inconsistency. And therefore, it is great for having a unique experience, I'd say, including castles. You know, you can book a castle, you can book a tree house, you can even book an island through these type of platforms. So it really pushes that. But next to this experience hypothesis, I guess it's also more mundane or less sexy aspects as well, including the price. One strength of Airbnb and other sharing economy platforms is a good ratio between performance and price. It is valued for that, and it comes very clearly through all the studies we do. And thirdly, it's also the amenities and the size of the apartments, which can be very attractive to some types of travelers. Consider families or groups of friends. Yes, you can go in a hotel, but usually you get kind of distributed across a number of rooms. It's not ideal. In an Airbnb, you can stay all together in an apartment, in a house. You have washing machine there, you have cooking facilities. So from that point of view, I think also these practical advantages do play a role.
How does Airbnb or other home sharing platforms, how does their impact differ around the world?
It's a fairly global phenomenon, I would say. It obviously started in Western countries, so it's coming out of San Francisco, actually. Then boomed quite soon in Europe, in the US, and also in Australia was one of the earlier countries. But today it's really global. It's present in more than 190 countries, 100,000 cities. It's literally everywhere. But there are some latecomers, which at the same time are the growth markets for Airbnb these times, including China, India. They were a bit difficult for them, as, for example, China often is for Western companies, especially the digital ones. Consider Google, consider Facebook. Airbnb tried hard to fulfill all the requirements in China, so they founded a local company called Airbnb China. They changed their name into A Being, which in Chinese means let's welcome each other with love. And they implemented a lot of particularly Chinese features like the Alibaba payment systems, integrated WeChat, and that sort of stuff. So they are hoping to really get off the ground in China. India is difficult and different again. It has been dominated by a budget hotel company, Oyo, which owns a lot of budget hotels, which therefore made it more difficult to conquer the budget market. And here, Airbnb choose to partner with them. It's a two-way partnership. Oyo wants to enter the US, so Airbnb may help them over there. And Airbnb wants to grow in India, and Oyo might be a good partner for that. So yeah, different dynamics in specific countries, but overall, I would say it's pretty global.
In some parts of the world, local governments have been perhaps a little reluctant or a little hostile towards Airbnb, particularly over zoning, fire safety, that sort of stuff, where they have been operating in a space where hotels have been operating but not been subject, I guess, to the same rules. Are we going to be seeing this sort of maybe tone down over time as maybe governments become more accepting of Airbnb?
You're correct. So were and are some governments, more particularly city governments, actually, which try to limit the phenomenon. I would say due to two reasons. They don't want to see a crowding out or a pricing out of the long-term rental market. And secondly, some of these places are also feeling they have enough tourism, I would say, like Barcelona. It's
Venice.
a typical Venice, yeah, typical places for that. They want to have control over the tourism development. So that's the main reasons. And they try to do something. And famous, I would say, are interestingly San Francisco, where Airbnb comes from. So they are relatively restrictive. New York is relatively restrictive. Barcelona, I mentioned it. Japan recently made their short-term rental laws much tougher, which led to a delisting of a majority of Airbnb offerings, actually in the short term at least. So yes, some governments do try to limit the phenomenon, but overall, I'm not seeing a big movement against. I also have to feel that a couple of years ago, there was more reluctance among public players, among governments to act. These platforms, and in particular Airbnb, have always pushed the storyline that they're too big to be stopped. And there might be some truth in that. Guests, tourists, they increasingly request it. They want to see it. And so I feel governments increasingly are becoming more accommodating. And Airbnb has always been very careful, obviously, in managing that type of relationship because they do know that's very critical point in their business model.
So that's similar to, say, Uber, for example, where it started off being, well, illegal, and now it's sort of just slowly become this inevitable part of how we get around.
Yeah, I think Uber had it harder in some places to get through because the taxi lobby in some places is also very strong, politically very strong, or for whatever reasons. There were also more discussions around labor arrangements and around Uber and how people are paid and self-employment status versus being employed and that sort of discussions. We see that less with Airbnb, I guess.
You touched on why people are using these platforms for accommodation, and one of them was around people having local experiences. Why is it important for people to have these local experiences when they go on holiday or just for work when they're away?
Because I've never stayed in an Airbnb. I'm one of those Luddites.
Really?
I'm one of those Luddites who always stays in a hotel. So, or some cheap hotel F1 or something. What are simpletons like me missing out on?
I guess the local experience is not unique to Airbnb, so probably you're not missing out on anything at the end of the day. But there is a general trend towards this authenticity and local experience aspect. It's not new, by the way. It's been around for some time, but I don't see any signal for it to stop in the medium term or to decrease in importance. It is a critical aspect. People do tend to look for it. I think it's to a certain extent due to a general push of globalization where places and also hospitality providers and tourism offers tend to become more similar due to these global forces. A hotel in Perth often looks similar to a hotel in London or in Johannesburg in South Africa.
And it doesn't matter how far away you go, you're probably going to find, the golden arches and all those sort of Western amenities.
Yeah, it is. That's what I mean. It can be a bit boring sometimes, but people, and I think especially the new generations like millennials, I include myself, although I'm borderline.
You're there.
We do like, or we do define ourselves to a certain extent through travel and through travel experiences. So having unique travel experiences, being able to share them with our peers on social media, this has become an important element. And having local experiences, typical local experiences, that I think offers you a strong storyline to share with your peers.
What do you think the future is of home sharing platforms like Airbnb and others?
In general, they are here to stay. Home sharing has not been invented with these platforms. It's been around for many, many years.
Just digital.
Yeah, exactly. It has become accessible on a global scale with these platforms. And Airbnb, by the way, is not the first one which has done it. It's HomeAway or Couchsurfing are quite a bit older. So they haven't invented it as such, but they are the biggest one these days. And what we see for the future, and it started the last years already, is that these platforms and competitors, they all try to move into the middle of the market, the center of the market. So there is a convergence. What does it mean? Airbnb now also offers boutique hotels. They have been present in the past on the sharing peer-to-peer economy platform, but now they are officially welcome. Or since a year or so, Airbnb offers restaurant bookings, which really does not fit, I guess. With
What? So you're
with,
having just having food at some random person's dinner table or something?
no, it's normal restaurants
Oh,
which you
okay.
can book over there, which that's what I mean. It does not really fit with the basic idea
Hmm.
of it. On the other side, hotels, they are moving into this home sharing thing. The biggest hotel brands like Marriott or others, they have now their own brands in that field. Or Booking.com, typically a hotel booking platform, also has massively increased actually their inventory of home sharing. So you can see all of them try to move into the
Yeah.
middle. They try to cover all. They try to become one-stop shops of, I guess, selling good experiences.
What's next in terms of our travel trends? How are we trending in that area?
I think we need to mention technology. That's really impacting a lot. We discussed one aspect of it, which are these platforms and the peer-to-peer economy, but there's much more to it. It has revolutionized how we search for holidays, how we evaluate holidays, how we share our opinions about holidays, how we pay, how we book. So more the peripheral aspects of holiday. But what about the core experience? We also see some changes there. I believe that it should be, or it will be, a human-to-human interaction will stay at its core. But robots are becoming more and more prevalent. In China and Japan, in particular, we have hotels which employ more robots than human beings as staff, which is, I guess, fascinating on the one hand, but scary on the other hand. They do all sorts of stuff, from being receptionists to waiters to chefs in the kitchen to bringing your luggage into the room. So that's one very strong movement to watch. It has a lot of implication for our holiday experience, but also for employment in the sector.
Because it is such a massive sector when it comes to employing, not just in Australia, but worldwide. What are we seeing overseas in terms of robots? And are we
Are
going
we
to see
going to
that
have
in
a
Australia?
robot-led Kentucky tour or something?
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. I can only emphasize that, but I wouldn't exclude it. So it's
Yeah.
growing. Although recently, one of these hotels which are leading in that space, they got rid of some of the robots because apparently they are not yet there where they hoped they would be with their
AI.
technical skills
Yeah.
and that sort of things. But yeah, I think it's moving in that direction. Robots cost less than human beings do. But I would ask, can they smile? Can they anticipate our needs? Are they really able to deliver that meaningful connection that we're looking for? Shifting a little bit away from the robots, I think there are even more useful integrations of technology. There is a restaurant in Shanghai, Ultraviolet. It consists just of a table in a white room. It's just one table. It's run by a famous French chef. And here they project images onto the walls, which accompany the food actually. So food leads, it's a multiple course menu, food leads. And if you get a specific type of food on the table, you will see certain type of images on the walls. You get the scent, which is linked to that. You get a sound, which may link to that. So you shift from an English forest into a tropical Indonesian context within a couple of minutes due to the help of technology.
So we all love traveling, well, except for those of us who don't, I guess. Uh,
Who doesn't love a holiday,
I
though?
don't know. What's going to get us to stop holidaying, to get us to give up holidaying, other than, us not having any money, I guess?
Yeah, you mentioned an important thing, I
Mm.
think. Yeah, looking at the development of tourism since the 1950s, it has been almost continuously growing. There was a slight stop or decrease in 2007, 2008. But other than that, continuous growth. We had 1.4 billion tourists last year, more than ever. And I'm pretty sure this will continue. What could stop that movement? I guess the desire is there to travel. The millennials even have it stronger than other generations. But I think the context could stop us or could reduce travel. And you mentioned one of the things that's available household income. That's one aspect. I think it's interesting to think about what happened in earlier stages with travel and tourism phenomena, like ancient Rome. Why did they already travel at that early stage? These Romans, they were quite wealthy, so they could afford to travel for leisure. They had good infrastructure, so this will count today as well, maintaining good infrastructure. And they had a lingua franca, Latin, so they could communicate with each other. And also it was relatively safe and secure at that time. So I think that's some of the factors that we need to watch. What about our welcoming attitude towards other cultures? What about safety and security in the world? What about the middle class? Is the middle class in future, can it afford to travel anymore? That's, I think, has some critical aspects. Next to, and that's, I want to emphasize that, also pollution and climate change. So here, tourism itself, I think, can make a contribution to.
But some parts of Europe, they've had. You mentioned before the taping that there's sort of flight shaming in some parts of Europe. Is that going to hit Australia or other parts of the world?
I think yes. I think it will hit the world, but the framework conditions, obviously, in different parts of the world are different. So I don't see Australians heavily shifting towards traveling by train in the near future between cities.
Well, Perth to Sydney takes about 3 days by train, so that's a bit
simply because it's
excessive.
a bit
The distance.
difficult, and the distance and the infrastructure is not 100% there. But I guess there is a social pressure to increasingly justify having a heavy ecological footprint. This will stay, I think. And perhaps it will lead to interesting phenomena like colluding in hypocrisy between consumers and providers. Because today we talk about greenwashing of providers, but perhaps in the future or even present, when there is social pressure to not fly, for example, you mentioned the flight shame movement, there might be the consumers happily buying in and colluding with some hypocritical statements from providers. So there's also risk around increasing social pressure, I guess, around that stuff.
Before we go, we hear you're working on a couple of books to do with travel. What are they about?
Yeah.
Other than travel, but in a bit more detail.
We are co-editing actually 2, I would say, interesting books, obviously. One is on an atmospheric turn in tourism. So we do like the concept of atmospheres because we think it captures quite well this shift towards authentic experiences. And there has been a lot of emphasis on product quality, on service quality, or on specific elements of quality. But we do think sometimes we lack an overall perspective. And the atmosphere, which is the kind of substance which flows between people and the place, and it's very fluid, it's hard to grasp, but it's so important to deliver good experiences. It has to do with what's the character of a place. Are we able to get it through? What about the different senses? It's not just about gazing at things, but it's using all our senses. It does mean also using the knowledge of different disciplines. It's not just about business or even just about ecological insights, but it has to do with design. It has to do with architecture. Are we able to coordinate within a specific place a certain type of architecture that we are able to deliver that mood, that atmosphere to visitors? I guess that's the topic and the tool set that we are trying to provide with that book. Another one we are working on is on travel and tourism tribes, sometimes called them neo-tribes, to make clear that it's not traditional tribes, although they have some similarities. There's a lot of debate around tourists becoming more and more individualized, and that's obviously true. It would be a great mistake to generalize phenomena and take just averages. But at the same time, we shouldn't exaggerate on the individualizing thing. I think the reality sometimes is in the middle. And obviously, we all are still collective beings, and we define our values, what is important to us, how we define success, how we define failures, also in some types of collectives. This can be called subcultures, if you like. We call them neo-tribes because these neo-tribes, they define, for example, what type of celebrities we are looking at. Think of cycling tourists. They will have their own communication channels, their outlets, their type of clothes they want to wear, the celebrities they're looking at, the events they want to go to, the ways they think traveling is correct. The same is true with bird watching tourists. They have their own, value set, which is not only linked to tourism, it is bigger than tourism. And that's what we're trying to do. We try to look at these subcultures and want to understand how they influence then the travel and tourism behavior of their members.
Very interesting. Quite detailed topics there around tourism.
What tribe would you be in?
I'm part of the cycling tribe. I admit,
Ah.
yeah. I love to cycle.
What tribe are you in, Jess?
Oh, I don't know. Probably family soon.
Maybe hiking tribe.
hiking tribe for you.
Getting lost in National Park Drive. No, not getting lost.
Well, this brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your knowledge on this topic.
Thank you very much. See you later.
You've been listening to The Future Of, a podcast powered by Curtin University. If you have any questions about today's topic, get in touch by following the links in our show notes. Bye for now.